Welcome to the Cold Brew Chick podcast. I'm your chick, Rachel, a blogger and lover of all things cold brew. Join me as we discover and learn from some of the greatest minds in the cold brew industry. Not a day goes by without a cold brew by my side. And now we're live. Hi, Omar. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you. How are you?
Good. You have to tell me, so where are you at exactly? Because, I mean, if you told me this was your house, I would believe you, but it looks pretty fancy. Where do you happen to be?
Yeah, so we have our hub location here in Long Beach, downtown Long Beach. Um, and we have everything connected. So we're in the ceramic industry as well, hand thrown clay products, from mugs, bowls, etc. Our hub are we have a culture location where we have a coffee bar, tea bar, pour over bar, elixir bar, and then we have a retail section, a book section, and then we're also growing mushrooms inside of here so people can see live mushrooms growing. In the back, we have all the cultivation supplies you need for mushrooms, from soil to grains, inoculation syringes. We have a flow hood, which is a mini chem lab that you do your injections under. That's a clean room, essentially. There is a warehouse in the back where trucks can pull in and out and pick up pallets if we're ever doing national or international export. We have that going on in the back, and then the offices are also connected here. So this is just my hub. So yeah, second home, you could say.
That is so cool. And for people that are listening and are thinking, what the heck are they talking about? So you have a cold brew with mushrooms that we're going to get into, but that's not how you actually got started, is my understanding. And you first got into the mushroom industry. So I first want to get into your story of that. How did you get into mushrooms, and then touch on, how did you decide to develop a bottled cold brew on top of it?
No, that's definitely the cold brew encompasses kind of this entire mushroom mission that we've been on. From the beginning, when we came in, our goal was to create a hub, a one-stop distribution, retail, and education hub for mushrooms in general. And we started sourcing a ton of mushroom products, books, foraging materials, soils, just scouring the market for anything mushrooms. We wanted it in under culture's umbrella. And so during that process of searching, we found there was definitely a huge void in ready to consume functional foods, not and specifically in mushrooms, and found that the natural food industry seems to be lacking in functional foods. Just in the grocery chains, there could be a ton more products. And then found that mushrooms, with all the research that we kept coming by with specific mushrooms, and just getting literally mind blown physically and by the words of what we're seeing lion's mane, cordyceps, turkey tail are doing for people and even pets. I rabbit holed into mushrooms. So the coffee became, how can we create a product that is consumed on a daily basis, that if somebody picks this up instead, they can get pretty much some of the highest nutraceutical functional ingredients into their body with their cup of coffee. And that's where the cold brew came from. I'm a cold brew drinker. I drink cold brew every day for the past, 10 years. So I found, for me, it just made sense. It was why should I be dosing myself or taking capsules or mixing a smoothie when I should just get my functional ingredients in something I'm already consuming? Adding another consumable to get something, I believe, is redundant. We should be trying to get the most out of what we're eating when we are. So that was part of this process. And I'm not perfect. I'm not the healthiest, but I really try to counter my unhealthy habits with functional food, and our coffee came about there.
Yeah, and I want to dive even back further, even before the creation of Culture Shroom. You mentioned to me, when we met at Expo West, you're chatting about, why you're so passionate about mushrooms. You mentioned your own personal journey with mushrooms and what they've done for you. And can you touch a little bit on that journey and process?
Totally. Yeah. The functional mushrooms, which is the ones that we use in our coffee, lion's mane, cordyceps, and turkey tail. The information has blew my mind. The stories and the success stories I've heard from these mushrooms have made me feel pretty much relevant and part of evolution for once in my life. And so that was powerful. I've been consuming the functionals myself for 5 years plus. So I do feel like they provide me an extra edge of energy. I dream very vividly. Think whatever my memory is decent, and I can give some of that, I think, to the functional foods that I'm ingesting, not just life, because my life isn't perfectly healthy. So these things must be doing something. And on the other end, I would say the psychedelic mushrooms definitely gave me a different perspective, not just from my own experiences, but from hearing so many people who had extremely powerful experiences or didn't want to kill themselves after taking psychedelic mushrooms, or they had terminal illness and they finally could accept death without the last years of their life being detrimental. Those stories are powerful. It's not something somebody should hear and just look over and say, oh, these things must be just some drug. Like, no, these are very logical, educated people who are using it with the intention to be better, to raise their consciousness. And I think that's powerful and that needs to be shared. And we definitely over leveraged like all of our other companies to make this happen. But I do believe with science and enough studies that come out, people will see that mushrooms can solve so many things, from brain, body, to even bioremediation, eating plastic. We're working with colleges on training mushrooms to eat polyurethane. We're using mushrooms to eat oil spills. There's just, it's so diverse of what these things can do. The coffee is just the simplest, most explainable version of what mushrooms are. If people can just start getting these three mushrooms into them, Googling, educating themselves on why we did this and what they are and what bioavailability is, I'm confident that this coffee can do more than just another cold brew.
Yeah, it's crazy how it's like functional mushrooms and then CBD within the course of these past couple of years have just exploded. And as a dietitian, being in the healthcare space, I see a lot of the trends that are coming, and those two for sure have been just explosive, especially with cold brew. I feel like those are the two most common that you see being combined into coffee anyway. But for people that are listening and are wondering exactly what mushrooms we're talking about, because you have the mushrooms you buy at the grocery store, right? Like your cremini or, your portobello or whatever. And then you have the other spectrum, the psychedelic mushrooms, which probably a lot of people listening don't necessarily want to go down that road per se. And then in the middle, you have these functional mushrooms. Can you break down for us what these are? How are they different from those two other mushrooms I just mentioned? And kind of, which ones should people take or what people should
Yeah.
know?
No, I think that's a great, even people in the mushroom industry, I think could benefit from kind of separating it the way you just did. Is there's gourmet mushrooms, like you said, the grocery store edible ones. There's the psychedelic ones that those are more medicinal. And then there is the psychomedicinal. Then there is the uh, functional mushrooms, which, to put them under an umbrella, they're adaptogens. So it would go under the same nutraceutical umbrella as ashwagandha, cacao, uh, yerba mate, bacopa, L-theanine. These things are all either brain or body hacking, naturally occurring things that they are adaptogens. So functional mushrooms are just calling them adaptogenic mushrooms, adaptogen mushrooms. So if you're at the store and you're in your specialty aisle, you'll see the word adaptogen maybe on different herbs or packaged materials. mushrooms are just these mushrooms that we use are all adaptogens. So that means that they're just assisting the brain or body in adapting to stress, from mental stress to physical stress. An adaptogen is just assisting the body in dealing with that.
Gotcha. So then where do the specific mushrooms come in? And you already mentioned some of them already, right? Like lion's mane and cordyceps. And you mentioned there's those main three that you include in your cold brew. But, how would someone know if they should have the lion's mane versus the cordyceps, or they should have both? Just kind of can you break down what those different mushrooms do?
Yeah, so that's probably the deepest part of this entire movement is there's 1.5 million mushroom species on the planet. We've only tapped into about 150,000 of those species. The largest living organism on the planet is a mushroom. It's called the honey mushroom, and it's the largest living thing on the planet. So there's just so much to be found. But to simplify what we found so far, is there's about 20 to 30 mushrooms that have been studied semi heavily, 10 of which have been studied very heavily. Five of those that have been studied so heavily they've been put into pharmaceuticals within various countries, like cordyceps mushroom in India and East Asia is highly prescribed and used. Lion's mane mushroom is prescribed in psychotherapeutic medication and psych meds in Japan currently. Chaga mushroom is taken in Finland for cancer treatment. So mushrooms have these. Those are the mushrooms that we're kind of concentrating on for now, is the high, more studied ones. But like I said, there's 1.5 million of them out there. So who knows what mushroom can do what? We do know for now lion's mane does NGF, which helps the brain nerve growth factor. It helps the brain literally rebuild dying neural pathways and assist in dying brain cells to not die. And that's one of the strongest things that lion's mane does. It also has a ton of other benefits, but that's Ericium is the compound in it, or Inacees is the compound. I need to double check that is actually causing that NGF. Cordyceps mushroom is a vasodilating blood mushroom, if you will. So it just increases blood flow to the entire body without changing the chemistry of your blood, which is it can be miraculous in terms of anti-aging and energy, actual sustainable energy. The turkey tail is a gut mushroom, so it's also been now highly studied in eating away at actual tumor growths, and it's been used to treat cancer in dogs. Turkey tail is an extremely powerful mushroom. It also balances the gut. It's a pre and probiotic. And so those are the three mushrooms we have in our cold brew. And they are some of the higher studied mushrooms. And each one has a function. The alkaline water base of our cold brew also lowers the acidity. So it is a little easier on the stomach. So that with the turkey tail should hopefully make our cold brew an easier daily drinker for people who want a good coffee, but they want to drink it every day. That was part of balancing the gut along this process. And then the cordyceps is vasodilating. So caffeine just tells our brain, don't go to sleep, don't be fatigued. Caffeine doesn't technically give us energy, but that quick don't go to sleep thing is really helpful. I love it. But I do want that long 4 to 8 hours of like sustainable energy. And that's where the cordyceps blood flow thing really comes into play. And then the lion's mane, I'm a huge believer in lion's mane. You'll dream more after you get lion's mane into your body, which dreaming, the theory is that's when we're categorizing our memories, our thoughts. So it's really important to go into REM and do it successfully. And that's how you're going to build your memory. So that's why lion's mane co-assists in memory and focus with that nerve growth. But yeah, that's the functional part of our coffee. The coffee itself, we use the Papua New Guinea Guatemalan dark roast, so you don't taste these mushrooms at all. It's just it's an amazing cold brew alkaline water based infused with dual extract mushrooms.
Before we get to the cold brew, I want to pick your brain and ask also the other mushroom that you mentioned. I know it's not in your cold brew, but chaga is one that has been a little bit used in the coffee industry because I'm sure you've heard of it. There's chagachino. There's
Yep.
that powder that you can add, to any coffee drink, and it's, they focus heavily on that chaga mushroom. Can you touch on what that mushroom does and why someone may want to add that to their coffee?
Yeah, so chaga is definitely one of those, like, I would say top five, and who knows these numbers of top 5, 10. I'm just throwing this out there, but it is very highly studied, especially in Eastern Europe and pretty much all throughout Europe, Siberia. Chaga is just it grows on birch trees in colder climates, so anywhere kind of on the northern part of the north of the equator, maybe you could say where Canada is and across, they all get chaga. So for centuries, chaga has been used as, it's even been called the anti-cancer conch by the Finnish. It's highly harvested by Eastern Asian cultures as well, and it's used for its anti-tumor growth, and it's also just put into an elixir where it can be one of the strongest anti-inflammatory naturally occurring things on the planet. If you look at, there's there's a list that's published. I forget what the list is, but it lists the highest antioxidant containing properties in all of the different things on the planet. Chaga, I think, on 50% of the list across the world is number one, and within the top three on any list across the planet, more than acai berries. Chaga has higher antioxidizing properties. So chaga is an amazing mushroom. I work with it all the time. Great thing to get into your body. Turkey tail and chaga are very similar. They're wood bound mushrooms that have high anti tumor, anti cancer potential.
Wow, it's just fascinating. I'm sure people are listening and thinking, why wouldn't we take mushrooms, and might be wanting to rush to the store and get some added to their cold brew, create a cold brew. But for anyone that's listening that wants to start incorporating these mushrooms into their life, I think the biggest question I know that I have is, what about dosage? How much do you need to take to feel the benefit? Is it something that you would feel the effects right away, or does it take some time for it to build in your system? How does someone know what's the right amount for them?
Totally. Yeah. That's a huge part of it. And unfortunately, I'll stick to bioavailability as the real part of it, because you can ingest 1,000 milligrams of one thing or 1 milligram of one thing. If your body actually absorbed the 1 milligram and absorbed none of the 1,000, I'll take the one. So that's availability. Bioavailability is the main component of this whole thing. And mushrooms technically need to be heated up above like 160 degrees to break the it's chitlin or something like this. This cell wall has to be broken before it can be bioavailable. So the mushroom extracts we use are dual extracted, heat treated, outdoor grown on wood, certified organic. So they grow on wood with the sun, and they're dual extracted. So we're not losing any of the natural organic way a mushroom would get vitamin D. Side note, mushrooms are the only thing that synthesizes vitamin D2. D3 is in dairy and whatnot. D2, which real vitamin D is only in the skin of fish, our skin, and mushrooms. So that's like little side note, but that's why growing them outdoor on wood gains the highest nutrient count. We extract from the fruit body only, not mycelium. I believe in mycelium. We just use the fruit body only for this extract, and we found it to be the highest bioavailability when you're heating up dual extracting these mushrooms. So it's really more not just getting any mushroom into your body, but making sure that how you're getting it into you is bioavailable. So heat them up. And if you're doing it for medicine, really ask questions, read online, and find, what is the best way to make chaga at home medicinally? What is the best way to, and then you'll find out that there is certain things that need to be done to really get it as a medicine. Um, yeah, we're working with some people who are extracting it into a crystalline form. So we're getting, a pound of mushrooms concentrated down to a crystal. That's going to be more for like medicine. To answer your question, 2,000 milligrams of a bioavailable product is what you kind of want to ingest per day. 2,000 milligrams, but make sure you're actually either heating it up or getting a product that's already dual extracted or ready for you to get, and do 2,000 milligrams. Our coffee has 1,000 milligrams per bottle. So if you're doing this medicinally, I would recommend to drink our coffee, but also find what mushroom your body needs and start taking that in addition to it.
Yeah, and is that 2,000 milligrams of each mushroom or 2,000 milligrams combined if you're
So it
doing,
depends what you're trying to treat. So for just daily consumption, the three mushrooms we chose are like a good trio of just daily consumption. Getting that 1,000 is a good base. If you're finding you want to increase memory, get more lion's mane. If you want to lower blood pressure, start messing with your blood, get cordyceps. If you feel like your immunity is low, then get chaga, turkey tail, some of the wood-bound mushrooms. If you are having skin or hair or nail growth issues, get tremella mushroom. If you're having sleeping issues, poria mushroom. So each mushroom has like a benefit. So figure out what your issue is, and then there's a mushroom that you can start getting the 2,000 of that mushroom. In addition to those three mushrooms, everybody should be ingesting, in my opinion, lion's mane, cordyceps, and turkey tail mushroom on a daily basis. If not more mushrooms, we should be getting a plethora of them in our body.
sorry, I just had this moment of like, as I'm processing all this information, it's just amazing to me how far we've advanced as humans when it comes to health. And thinking, I think just because I work in healthcare and I'm always seeing patients and whatnot, people like us that are taking these steps with our health and taking things like CBD and mushrooms and the proper diet and whatnot, just how much longer and how much of a better life we're going to live than the people before us. And I'm so curious to see, like, as a generation, how long we end up living as far as like our average lifespan. I'm sure it's going to be like the late 90s, or like we'll all live to be in our hundreds just because we're all taking our mushrooms every day.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I think we've also been like flooded with so much processed food since we were kids at school till maybe 10 years ago. We've maybe woken up to a little cleaning up of the diets and what we think of meat and vegetables and how we consume it. I mean, some damage was definitely done to us already. But yeah, I'm hoping that with this movement of really understanding nature, maybe we can reverse and also educate our kids better and tell them, find the juiciest tomato, don't find the cheapest tomato, find the best lettuce. That's how we should be raising the next generation, is knowing their food and what it can do for their body.
As a dietitian, I couldn't have said it better myself. It's like you took
Nice.
the own words from me. So
Nice.
let's dive into your cold brew, and I want to start with your bean selection. I'll never forget when we were at Expo West, and you're telling me about your cold brew and the coffee you're using. You told me you said Papua New Guinea, and I just lost my marbles because people that are listening know Papua New Guinea is my favorite coffee to use for cold brew of all the origins. It's my absolute favorite. So, and it's not very common. It's not like the go-to when I go to coffee shops and I ask them what they're using. So when you said you're using Papua New Guinea, I was so excited. So just kind of share with me, so you choose that and you said Colombia, what made you decide to pick those beans? Did it take you a really long time to figure out what combination of coffee you wanted? Just how did you figure that process out?
Yes and no. So uh, it's also Guatemalan, not Colombian, but Colombian beans are amazing too.
Scratch
But
that, reverse it.
no worries. So the reason we chose those two is one, I was not, when I was developing this coffee, I was not a master of coffee beans. I honestly didn't know that much about. I knew what a good tasting coffee was, but I did not really know enough about it. So my cousin Danny owns two coffee places called 602 Coffee, and he became really the person who was able to walk me through the steps of understanding which ones are better for cold brew and not, roasting them with light, medium, dark, and we would sit there and taste every different one. Cold brewing with 30 pounds a batch versus 50 pounds a batch versus 20, seeing the difference in concentration. We walked through all of. He really sped up what would have taken me 5 or 10 years. I was able to do with him in like 3 months. So that's really what got me educated quickly. And through that testing and trial and error process, we were on it every day trying something. But that's how we came across the Papua New Guinea Guatemalan 50-50 mix is Danny, who he's our coffee consultant now. That's who pretty much, if I have anything coffee, I talk to Danny about it. And that's how we found this dark roast. And we take that roast to our brewing facility where they specialize in alkaline brewing of products specifically. So that's why I chose that facility. And so we take the beans, we roast them the same day. We take them to the other facility, which is about 10 minutes away from our roasting. And then we cold brew same day that it's roasted for 48 hours in refrigerated brewing. So a lot of cold brewing sometimes is not done in a fridge, which we do a 48-hour fridge brew, and then it's bottled or kegged. But it's never heated up, it's never pasteurized. So a lot of the cold brews on the market that are shelf stable, or most of the canned cold brews, they're all either bath pasteurized or they've gone through some sort of a pasteurization process, versus ours is kept cold, stored cold, enjoyed cold.
Yeah, you can definitely tell when you taste it. You do not have a shelf-stable cold brew, and I mean that as a compliment. I just realized
Thank
that
you.
could sound really insulting, but no, it's very much a compliment because most shelf-stable cold brews are not pleasant to drink, from my personal experience. But what blew me away the most about your cold brew, because first of all, I want to mention this. There is another very famous mushroom coffee company out there. I won't say their name. Everyone probably knows who I'm talking about. But what's very unique about you is you are the first, and as far as I know, only bottled mushroom cold brew coffee that's out there on the market,
Correct.
which to me is huge. And what's so great about yours is that, when I drink it, it just tasted like cold brew. I could not taste the mushrooms at all. How on
Yeah.
earth did you do that?
So using those extracts, the dual extracts, we have there's pretty much a thousand, 2,000 milligrams of active per ml. So it doesn't take a ton of liquid to make this an effective beverage. So that makes it really easy. If we were to use a powder or a non or a single extracted version, you might taste some of the mushrooms, but because we use a dual extract, highly uh, uh, potent formula, you don't have to add very much. And then the dark roast of the coffee also like really masked the flavor perfectly. And then not adding any other things besides just coffee, water, and mushroom extract made it simple. So we didn't have to like test a bunch. It was just, let's make the cold brew amazing, alkaline water based. Let's start adding the mushrooms to get it to 1,000 milligrams, and we figured that out. And then now let's bottle it. Let's keg it. We don't want to use metal kegs because they're logistically horrible for the planet and they're annoying, and you're just like they're recyclable, reusable, but you're picking them up and dropping them off. So we got recyclable, disposable kegs that they're made with recycled material and they can be recycled. So that's the cool part of these kegs. And that's how we're able to get it on tap into different coffee shops and hopefully get it spread around quicker into corporate, maybe take it to farmers markets and give out it just made it fun to sample out the coffee when it's on tap than bottle.
All right. For those of you listening on the podcast, we just did a quick little room switch. So that's why you can hear music all of a sudden. But I know so you had your original cold brew there, but you also had, I know you said it was limited edition, but I'm begging and pleading you, please keep it, that cinnamon one that you came out with. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. It was so good. Can you please go into how you created that cold brew and why that one's so unique?
Yeah, so the Vanilla edition, we wanted to at least come up with some flavored version that had a functional flavor. So we developed the flavor Vanilla actually for 1 second. I'll show you for this product, which is it's a Vanilla cinnamon vanilla flavored shroom drop, and Ceylon cinnamon is antiviral, and vanilla is like a really soothing thing to put down your throat. So we combine those two things to also mask the flavor of the mushrooms in this tincture. When we created this, it was helping a lot of people who didn't like the flavor of mushrooms start ingesting these medicinal mushrooms. That is where we wanted to put Sanilla then with our cold brew. So Sanilla is a functional flavor that we created previously that then we brought that branded Sanilla flavor into the cold brew. But the acidity of the cold brew seemed to be eating away at we use a natural 100% organic Ceylon cinnamon extract. We don't use a flavoring. So the coffee was like eating the flavor almost to where you couldn't taste the flavor after a few weeks. And so it wasn't bad, but it wasn't up to like where we wanted it to be. So we pulled it, we're refining it, and that's why we released it as limited edition. Is we did not want to release more than a very small quantity just to see some reviews, get it out there and get it ready. But anything limited edition we do, we will.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that it's going to be making a return at some point because, oh my goodness, it was so good. It reminded me a lot of, here in San Diego, one of the most like popular cold brew creations you'll see is like horchata cold brews. So it reminded me a lot of those type of cold brews where that cinnamon's really strong and pleasant. And cinnamon goes so well with coffee. I mean, it has pretty much ever since the invention of coffee. I feel like people have been adding it to make their coffee taste better. So it just works so well. But I'm glad to hear too that you have that dropper option. So if somebody wanted to add it to their cold brew, that's something that they could easily do. I love it. And it sounds like you are one of the best places to get it with all the research and all of the technology that you're putting in to get the toppest quality, is that a word? Top quality mushrooms available for people to use.
Thank you so much for listening to the Cold Brew Chick podcast. I hope this episode brought you some quality content and hopefully you learned something new about cold brew too. If you wouldn't mind leaving a review or even a comment onto our iTunes page, I would appreciate it so much. 5-star, even 1-star, I'm open to anything and everything. Thank you so much again, and I'll see you next time.